Our issues, our voices, our views. This is Politics in Black. What's happening, family? We are back and we are live on a Sunday, a beautiful Sunday too, for another broadcast of Politics in Black, brought to you by NAASD-LA, the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants in Los Angeles. We got a lot to talk about today, Friday. So I've been excited about this one. Wait, before we get started, real quick, my name, Chad Brown. If you're first time here, sitting across from me, she's again a little close because once again we have an in-studio guest today, Friday Jones. Friday, say what's up to the people.
What's up,
we
people?
Vibrating right now.
Okay, look. So we are really jazzed because going into this week, we all know it's AB 3121, and every time there's a hearing, it's like a Super Bowl or a playoff game for us.
This is the big one. This is the championship coming up.
This is the championship. And so with that excitement, we had ETM Media on earlier today with what they were doing around AB 3121. Today we're here. We have one of our guests will be presenting at the hearings this week. Yep. We have a meeting with CJEC on Monday night, and then obviously
we're gonna get to that.
Then we have the hearing. So I feel like this is like an all-star lineup.
That's right.
And we have our first guest of today, who is one of LA's finest.
One of LA's finest doing the work on the ground. Yeah.
She keeps us alive, well, and informed, to say the least. So
let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. We got a lot to talk about. As you heard Friday say, on Tuesday, March 29th, we've got a big meeting of the AB 3121 task force. So that's going to be a lot of what we talk about today. But first, let's hop in with Jasmine Cannick. And Jasmine, from the newsroom to the front lines, Jasmine has been outspoken on today's most pressing social issues at the national and local levels, including politics, foster care, criminal justice reform, women's rights, HIV and AIDS, racism in the LGBTQ community, homophobia in the Black community, voting rights, and homelessness. She is unashamed of being equally critical of the killings of Black people by the police as she is of the killings of Black people by other Black people. Most recently, Jasmine spent 4 years covering Ed Buck, a major Democratic donor, after 2 men died in his apartment of meth overdoses, and countless other Black gay men came forward about the white man in West Hollywood who had a Tuskegee experiment-like fetish that included injecting young Black men with meth. Ed Buck was finally arrested in September 2019 and charged with the deaths of Jimmo Moore and Timothy Dean. He was convicted on all 9 counts in a federal court on July 27, 2021. And this young lady had played a major role in bringing attention to that white gay serial killer that was preying on our young Black men. So thank you so much, Ms. Cannick. Welcome to Politics in Black, Jasmine Cannick.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, Jasmine. And we've been wanting to talk to you for a while because you do great work, as we were talking about before the show. You're in the community. You are bringing a big focus to issues that are impacting our community on the front lines. And so we always want to highlight folks on the front lines. Independent journalism, yes. And you're doing it the right way. Yeah. So I want to jump right in with you because the Ed Buck case was one that caught some national attention after a lot of the work that you did, bringing attention to it. And I just want to give the folks, our audience, an update here. Like, where do we stand here? Because he needs to see a lot of jail time.
So, for folks who are new to the story, Ed Buck's white major political donor for the Democratic Party.
Yep.
And it's Jamel Moore. So in 2000, it's
Jamel.
Okay. A lot of people say that. In 2017, Jamel Moore died in his apartment of a meth overdose, and his mother, had reached out to a bunch of journalists in Los Angeles because she just knew something wasn't right. The same day he arrived in LA from Houston, he died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at the time, the sheriff's department treated it like a run-of-the-mill overdose.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Here's this upstanding white man telling us he had no idea what happened. Never mind the fact that Jamel is 26 and he's 60-something years old. Mm-hmm. None of that was odd.
Yeah.
So I finally, was connected to Jamel's mother, and I wrote about it. And then guys started contacting me, so I kept writing about it,
Yeah.
and it just became really clear that there was a pattern of behavior where there was this white man who was preying on homeless black men, and using his money to, and the fact that they had a place to sleep for the night, using that to basically pick his victims, and not every journalist moves into being like, a strategist on a case and trying to figure out how to get someone convicted. But when people are dying and people are being preyed on, you kind of have a responsibility. And so luckily, I already worked in politics.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, this, and I am a strategist for a living. So I was like, okay, we're going to put a strategy together and try to see if we can move former District Attorney Jackie Lacey to charge him. She did not.
Okay.
Lacey did not charge him. And on the day that it was a year, usually the district, they wait one whole year. So it was a year later, they said they weren't going to charge Ed Buck in that case or any of the other case with the men who came forward. And then 6 months later, 55-year-old Timothy Dean was found dead of the same cause on the same mattress on the same floor in the same apartment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
he don't know nothing about the mattresses either. I don't know how it wound up on my living room.
But it was
floor.
another 9 months from January before he was finally arrested. I'm happy that the feds took the case. And because he probably wouldn't be charged.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. So it took the FBI basically to step in.
Department of Justice
to step in to actually see some charges come down. So here locally, you weren't getting any traction behind arresting him or prosecuting. Okay.
No, not from District Attorney. We said she had to go and she's gone.
Thank goodness. That's right.
Not from former District Attorney Jackie Lacey, who I went to her office and met with her about the case. So it's not like she didn't know. She knew.
And what did she give you any rationale behind why she was refusing to arrest him?
I don't know. Maybe it was the $500 he donated to her. I had no idea.
Okay. All
right. Wow. The sad thing though is that's like a low.
That's like a penny.
Price.
Like that's like a drop in the bucket. I don't even think it was $5. I think maybe it was $100 he gave her. Anyway, he didn't give black people money. Out of the over $500,000 that he donated,
he gave her $100.
Black people represent like 0.001% of it.
But I mean, I appreciate you sharing that because that just tells me the value that they're putting on these black lives.
Well, it's the value, and we at a national level, I mean, the discourse is always, well, what is happening to these black men, right? We have black men in the South who just kind of disappear. No one knows anything. And it's like people don't just disappear. Right. There's someone who always knows something. And I think for the folks here in Los Angeles, like it was just reminiscent of that. Like someone has to be held accountable. And coming from that reparationist background, interactions with the police, interactions with the judicial system and the DOJ, like we have whitewashed crime so much so that if you almost are white and you commit a crime, like people don't think anything's going to happen to them. And I think he really felt protected by the system.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, he absolutely felt protected. Yeah. But we also at the same time have to remember that when we on the other side of that conversation, we're advocating for changes, right? We're advocating for changes to drug crimes and this and that. And sometimes the unintended consequences are people like Ed Buck get to slip through because we no longer want to charge people for distributing drugs and this and that. California is an interesting state. Luckily, federally, that ain't changed. Drugs are drugs. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, you can still get charged federally for distributing methamphetamine or distributing drugs that cause a death. And we were seeing more and more people charged. My good friend, Councilmember Michelle Chambers' brother, passed away, Michael K. Williams, from an overdose. They charged the people who gave him the drugs.
That's right.
They charged the people in the Mac Miller case. They're charging folks, and I am not an abolitionist. I am a reductionist.
Okay.
I'll make that clear. I want to see certain people out, but I do believe certain people need to go in.
Right.
And so I'm okay. I'm, look, I tell people on this case, I'm able to separate my feelings about things and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Do I have issues with the sheriff's department and its leader in particular? Absolutely. But the two detectives that worked on the case for Ed Buck were the second pair of detectives, and they actually really worked the case. And if it hadn't been for them, we wouldn't have had the evidence for the prosecutors to put before the jury during the trial. So I'm really clear on the role that everyone played. And I'm very grateful for that, because it took basically 2.5 years for anyone to really pay attention to what was going on. And in all that time, he was still doing all the things that he does.
Yeah.
Like, and he... he hired Christopher Darden for the trial. And as quiet as it's kept, fired him as soon as he got convicted, because he had only hired his black attorneys for the optics of it. And when that didn't work, he got rid of them and hired Harvey Weinstein's defense attorney. So that's actually who's representing him now. So tomorrow is a hearing. It's a standard hearing. A lot of times people who are found guilty, they try to have their attorneys file a motion for judgment acquittal, which is basically a motion saying that there wasn't enough evidence that a reasonable jury could find the defendant guilty. That is absolutely false in this case. I'm still terrified by the evidence that I saw at that trial, as I'm sure the jury is. And so he's arguing the same arguments from court, which is that Jamel didn't die from all the meth I gave him. He died from AIDS. And Timothy Dean didn't die from all the meth I gave him. He died from a severe coronary disease. I'm like, okay, whatever. So we got to go through this hearing tomorrow. We hope that our judge denies it. If the judge denies it, then we move on to sentencing, which is April 4th. The following Monday, all the families are coming into town. Okay. And the prosecution has recommended life on counts 1 and 2.
Oh, absolutely.
Because those are the counts dealing with the deaths of Jamel and Timothy. And then a total of 120 years on counts 3 through 9. And they want him to pay approximately $52,000 to each victim in restitution, and a $400,000 fine. Okay. And we still got 2 wrongful death lawsuits in civil court against him. Got it. So, but it's almost time for him to hit cell block D. And I hope that he has... I hope his roommate knows all about this case.
Knows exactly who he is.
I agree.
I don't think he's ready, but he don't have a choice. He got to go. He's a detriment to society. He got to go. He got to go.
But thank you for that update, Jasmine, because we want to stay connected until he's behind bars, right? We don't want to let up there. And so anything we can do to help continue to bring awareness and help you continue to bring awareness to that.
I will let you know.
Let us know.
I'll
definitely.
let you know as soon as the hearing is over tomorrow, which way it went.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I want to pivot real quick to another case out here that's older. Right. And we actually had Michael Richardson on our show. But the case of Matrice Richardson, which I know you were involved in as well. And it's something, I have daughters, so it's something that's near and dear to my heart. I want to see her see justice. So
me too.
Where are we with Matrice Richardson's case?
Oh, Lord. That's a hard one, because now there's all this interest in Matrice's case, and which could be a good and a bad thing depending on, why folks are interested in it. Because, like with that Buck in the beginning, there wasn't interest in this missing black girl that went missing in Malibu, right? So, folks are hoping to get the case reopened. I know that Supervisor Holly Mitchell reauthorized the county's reward for information. I think it was a $10,000 reward. I continue to believe that the sheriff's department, the folks that were at the Malibu Lost Hills station know what happened to her.
Yes.
I have no faith in our current sheriff that he even cares, because she's black, and he made it clear in the LA Times this week who he cares about.
That's right.
And it's not us.
That's right.
So, but yeah, so I think what's important for people to know is that, yes, this happened in 2009, but folks are still working on it. So like her father and her mother and friends and community, like we're all still actively engaged in trying to find justice, because at the end of the day, if you remember, when her remains were found in that ravine, the sheriff's department moved her body.
They sure did.
Before the coroner investigator could get on site.
That's right.
Which is an unusual move, especially because they used the excuse that they were worried about Yogi or Boo Boo the bear coming to get her. And it was like, animals. Really? Okay, that's a whole nother conversation. But we never were able to get a conclusive cause of death because of that. And I still believe that that's intentional. I think that was intentional.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of things that have happened with the sheriff's department around that case has been intentional. And I think it's even easier to believe after, those of us who follow the sheriff's department and are engaged in trying to expose some of the crazy stuff that happens in that department aren't surprised when these stories come out. But like Friday, when the story came out about the sheriff's department, worried about the optics of a deputy who had his knee on the head of an inmate, and they were more concerned about the optics of it, right? And it's like, that's what I feel with the Matrice case, like that there's a lot that's being hidden from the public, from her family, because it doesn't look good for the sheriff's department.
To me, that case always started with the cut up video. Like the fact that it was never a clean video to begin with of what was going on at that station at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it was, it's like that to me was always the indictment. But I was told from a legal standpoint, if you have tampered evidence, and the DA's office receives tampered evidence, that becomes the problem. And I'm like, well, it wouldn't be a problem if your immediate thing was to just arrest everybody, prove your innocence. This is how this DA office is going to move. But that apparently is not how law works, and I don't get it.
It's interesting you say that, because that was one of the excuses Jackie Lacey gave for not convicting Ed Buck in the Jamel Moore case, was that the evidence was tainted. It was obtained illegally. Yeah.
No, there's a very distinct a theme between those two cases that you can see. Police malfeasance and a very real effort not to bring the killers to justice.
Let's just be really clear, though. If you white and you don't pay your restaurant bill, no matter how crazy you might be talking, you're liable to get offered a ride home.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
They're not going to search your car, find some personal use marijuana, and then use that to chart as one of the reasons why they're going to take you into custody, right? I think for me, one of the things, sadly, Black Lives Matter mattered in 2009, but Black Lives Matter as a movement as it is today didn't exist when that happened. And I think had that been the case, there might have been more pressure put on the sheriff's department, because at that time, Lee Baca and Paul Tanaka
were in office.
We're running that department, right?
Two criminals,
So, it's one of the things where I hope in our lifetime, because we're like all the same generation, that we finally get an answer to it.
Yeah, for that case, yes. That's a cold file that, I don't know, someone needs to drop a dime. Somebody
no statute of limitations on murder, so
absolutely not.
We need a cause of death, right? I know they closed the case, but
they need a hairpin piece of evidence that they don't currently have.
Or someone to just come forward from the department.
Who knows?
Yes,
who knows the
exactly.
truth?
Just say this is what happened, because they moved it. Interesting, they did the Vatican shuffle. They moved folks around. I guess that's what I call it.
Yeah.
When they do that in the police department, they move. That's
right.
what the Vatican does.
That's what the Vatican does.
No
You're right about
offense
that.
to the Catholics. I'm just saying, y'all do move people around. They get in trouble.
They do not lose their position. You are correct.
So let me ask you this: when it comes to pressure, because Ed Buck, obviously Democratic donor. We live in California. Democratic. Stronghold. Where's the Democratic Party on either one of these cases?
Nowhere to be found.
Okay.
And when it comes to Ed Buck, look, at the time, his BFF was the chair of the party. Not just the state party, but the local party as well, Eric Bauman.
Okay.
So that should tell you something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You have, even right now, you have about 10 people running for office right now in LA who have all taken Ed Buck's money.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were asked to return the money to the fund to help the victims and to fight for, to help with the legal fund, they did not do that.
Okay.
And I continue to pressure them about it. People think that I, am just going, beating a dead horse. I'm not going to stop doing that.
Please don't.
Because
absolutely,
there are literally 2 people running for mayor, Mike Fior, Kevin De Leon, who took over $20,000 from Ed Buck, and they want to be the mayor of LA.
Yeah.
No.
People need to know that.
And you got, if not $1 million, close to $1 million in your campaign coffers. And look, I work in politics. You can spend that money on whatever you want to spend it on. So I don't like when they come and they say, oh, we can't give it back because that was back in 2015. Oh, no, you can give it back because when Harvey Weinstein was busted, Garcetti, everyone couldn't move fast enough to give that money back, or to the Me Too or the What's Up, what was it, Time's Up Fund or whatever. So miss me with that. So, but the party is nowhere to be found. Everything that ever did happen with the party, they had to be pushed on it. The late chair, the Black Caucus, for the state party, Darren Parker was very helpful to me. And the Black Caucus did do something several years ago before he passed away. But it's always been a struggle with the party on that, because there are friends who took his money. And I'm like, okay, well, how is anyone ever supposed to learn a lesson if we keep endorsing and supporting folks and not holding them accountable? Sidney Kamlager, who took his money too. Yeah. I don't care if you Black.
Right. No. Yes.
That almost makes it worse, because when I told Congresswoman Bass and I were at Fox News, don't judge me. I was going on I can't remember the guy who replaced O'Reilly's show, and then she was going on another show. So we were in the makeup and we were just talking, and I was like, oh, by the way, this is in 2017. I was like, oh, by the way, this happened, blah, 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 this guy named Ed Buck. But I was going through the list, Karen, your name is on there. You got money from him. Do you know that the very next day I had a knock at my door, and she had sent someone to my house with a check.
There you go.
To go towards his funeral. The money that Ed Buck gave her, she took it out of her campaign coffers and wrote a check for Miss Nixon, because at the time Timothy Dean hadn't died. This is 2017. To help, because Jamel hadn't been buried yet. It was that had happened that recently, to help with the funeral. Yeah. That's why I'm supporting her, because
kudos, Karen Bass, kudos.
Exactly, but then her 2 opponents who took $20,000, $25,000 are, just sitting up here like, but Black Lives Matter. No, they don't matter to you, apparently.
That's right.
They don't matter to you or your fake sense of ethics, obviously. And so, anyway, all right.
I know, right? That's my attitude anyway.
So I think we have maybe about 5 or 6 minutes left. I do want to talk a little bit about LACDP. Let's talk about the party just a little bit. People don't quite even know what LACDP is. What does the Democratic Committee do? I vote Democrat. I don't know what a LACDP is. Tell us what it is so that the people understand, because we've had redistricting that's going to affect.
Right. So they like to confuse people. So on your ballot it says County Central Committee, and you're, what the hell is it? It's just a fancy way of saying the Democratic Party. Okay. So the LACDP is the LA County Democratic Party. On your ballot, it shows up as County Central Committee, right? And basically, I tell people this: you can be a registered Democrat and vote as a Democrat on your ballot, but you're not a part of the party. To be a part of the party means to be an elected member of the party, whether that's the state party, the DNC, or your local county party, right? So right now we're talking about the county level, right? And so what the local party does is basically all of your electeds, everybody who's a Democrat that runs for office comes before the local party, one, for the endorsement, and 2 for financial support, right? So a lot of times if we endorse someone, then we support them. And as you know, the Democratic Party is labor and labor is the Democratic Party. So a lot of times those things go hand in hand. Every 4 years, 7 people from each assembly district in the state of California, which there are 80, are elected to represent their community, their district on the county central committee. And so I ran in 2020 because I was mad about Ed
You're the
Buck.
reason I even found out about it from your campaign, actually.
Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I did a whole educational campaign because I wanted people to understand, like, if you ever wonder why the party doesn't support certain things, this is why, because you have a body of people who
They don't
we
look like
aren't
us.
in the majority
We are
of
not.
them, who make these decisions, right? And so, as an example, they endorsed Alex Villanueva in 2020.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was part of the crew that I'm so sorry. I should have never supported that man. but I have buyer's remorse too, but he's going to go too. But, now the party has condemned him and is not going to be supporting him. But my point is this: for people who care about the Democratic Party and want to be involved in it, you should become a voting member of your party at your county, state, and state level. And if you think you got the chops, run to be on the DNC as well. But that's what the LACDP is. And everybody wants the Democratic endorsement. Everybody wants the backing of the party, the support of the party. The party adopts a platform, which, is oftentimes lip service, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And they don't like me, and I don't care. I don't get any of the Plum Committee assignments or anything because they think I got a big mouth and I tell all their business, and they don't like me, and I really don't care because I didn't get elected. I did not get elected to kiss butt and try to move my way up in the party, which is what a lot of people do. And I am now of the mindset that I'm not ever bringing a chair to the table because my community is the damn table.
Amen, sister.
They need to be bringing a chair to us.
Amen. And we keep speaking up. We need that voice. We need to hear you because you're bringing such good information. Not only to Friday learns from you, I learned from you, right? And what you're doing. So please keep doing that. And we need more of you in those seats.
Well, yeah.
I'm going to help people. I can't. 2024 is the next. Right, so folks need to start thinking about
get ready to run,
getting ready to run.
Figure out your district. If you move before the deadline, not after the deadline, so that you can be where you need to be.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is the time. This is the time to actually start thinking about it. And I'm so glad you said that because another question like we hear all the time is, well, how do you become a delegate? How do you get to go to the state? Convention. How do you go to the national convention? And I'm like, you have to be part of your county's committee. And LA has the largest committee, I think, in the nation.
We do. We have the largest.
And so when we hear policy coming out of the Democrats' platform and we go, oh, I don't see myself. Oh, why is this the focus? Oh, because not enough of you registered Democrats have actually joined the Democratic Party. And that is the con that we need to shine the light on. Just because you are a registered Democrat does not mean that you are a member of the Democratic Party.
And they don't want you to know. That's another reason why they don't like me. Because I told everybody they secret how you get on the county central committee. And more people are running who are not the go along to get along people who are, yes, whatever you say do. I will vote that way, even if it's against my own best interest or my community. I'm not that person.
Right.
I will be the only person, and I still don't care.
Yeah.
If I go the opposite way on something, if it's the right thing
to do.
One of the arguments that I had as a newcomer, because I'm an alternate, right? I'm an alternate for Gina Harris, she's what are we? District 54 is now 55, but let's not even get into the moving lines. But one of the things that was hard for me is I spent almost a year just kind of at the meetings trying to understand who's who and what's going on. And because this was done in COVID, I don't know if it's good or bad. If it would have been better had it been an in-person
It would have been better in
experience.
person because then the chair couldn't just silence people with the flick of the button.
That's right. That's right.
Because it's hard to do that when we were meeting in person. But
Right.
the meetings have gotten quite stank on
Yes,
Zoom.
on-
And a lot of disrespect.
Yes.
A lot of disrespect.
In that chat.
And they are able to make sure that the moderates, who are the majority, keep that majority by silencing progressive voices and anyone else who dissents. Because on Zoom, all you have to do is hit mute.
Yeah.
We have to change that, people.
definitely gonna change that.
We getting the early news.
Yeah.
We have a minute left. We love you. I know
love
where to
you
find
too.
you, but let people know your social
Yeah,
media. And if
absolutely.
you are not following her, honey,
You need to you change that right now.
You
change
do.
that right now.
My website's iamjasmine.com, and my name is spelled, thanks, Daddy, Jasmyne. Twitter, I'm Jasmine, so just my name,
yes, you
Jasmine, because I've been on
totally-
there long enough.
Yes.
Facebook, I'm Jasmine, and on Instagram, I'm Hello Jasmine.
Okay.
And that's it. And my emails and all of that stuff are out there. I'm pretty easy to reach, and anytime you guys want me to come back, I definitely will. I'm happy I was finally able to make it in here. It wasn't for not wanting to come.
No, it was always scheduling.
It's just scheduling.
Yes, with your show. Yeah,
but
no.
I really appreciate that you do this show and that you educate folks. I think this is so dope. And of course, I have to give a shout out to my girl Poetess
Yeah,
for
thank you.
always making sure the community has a platform
That's right.
and somewhere to come to share and to give out information about things that we need to know about. We love you, Poetess.
We definitely
We
love
do.
you. We definitely
She's
love
our producer extraordinaire over there working the boards. We can't thank you enough.
No, thank you.
Anytime you want to come
Anytime.
back, if there's something we need to help you shine a light on, we for any guest that we have, we always make sure this is not like some one-way street. We're so glad that you were able to come and share the information from today.
Absolutely.
Because I think people want to know, and people follow, like people from out of state kind of follow some of the little, they're not little stories, they're major stories here, but they follow because they understand the implications kind of nationwide.
We
and
didn't
so
get
thank
into
you
Compton.
for being that person.
We should have talked about Compton.
We got time. We got time.
We didn't talk about the Compton trial.
we have time. We can bring you back just to do that.
We will definitely bring you back.
Well, especially when the verdict comes back. It'll be interesting to see.
To see.
And then, of course, I'll reach out and let you know how the ad buck stuff goes, and I'll just keep you in the loop. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here again. It was a pleasure. And like Friday said, you are a friend to us. So please, you are always welcome here. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
So I think we're going to go to a quick break. And after we come back, we're going to have Dr. Harrell and Arthur Walls. But first, folks, like the video, share the video while we're live.
Follow Jasmine.
Subscribe to the channel. If you want to help us keep this going, you want to help these conversations continue, please hit the super chat on YouTube or donate via Venmo or Cash App, $ NAASD-LA. And we'll be right back in about a minute. Stick with us.
So if you were to bring the black share of wealth at least to the black share of the population, it would require an additional at least $10 trillion. if you were to bring the black share of wealth at least to the black share of the population, it would require an additional at least $10 trillion.
What's happening, family?
Woo-hoo.
We are back from break from that first segment with Jasmine. That was an incredible segment. I really enjoyed her.
Jasmine is the best.
She
is a true shero. For LAWPI, if folks don't know what LAWPI is, Los Angeles African American Women's Political Policy Institute is what that stands for. And these are black OG women from the 70s who needed black women running for office. And so they started this organization. Jasmine comes to teach almost every session.
That's exactly what she
so
did.
She's
teach.
about this life.
Absolutely. So we're about to go into the second segment with Dr. Antoinette Harrell and Arthur Walls. But before we do that, we wanted to run a quick video introducing Dr. Harrell. And as you know, she's a friend to this show. She's been here before.
She has.
She's an American historian, genealogist, and civil rights activist. She's known for her research in post-slavery peonage of African American sharecroppers in the southern United States. So we're going to run a quick video for folks that missed her on the show previously, just to get you familiar with her, and then we'll come back with Dr. Harrell and Arthur Walls.
My daddy, the whole family, was held against their will. If you did leave, they either come get you or have somebody kill you or whatever. Jerry Dawson, he lived around the same place we lived on. He left, they went and got him, brought him back, carried him right down there from his house, killed him. Hung him up in a tree, castorized him, and hung him up right from his house where his children, everybody could see him. I'm pretty sure it's 55, 56 when this happened.
Most of us think that the end of the Civil War in 1865 closed the chapter on slavery in the American South, but that's far from the truth. Over the next 100 years, generations of black Southerners were forced to labor against their will. This new form of slavery happened in the shadows of the first half of the 20th century. And even though civil rights movement began advancing racial equality in the South in the 1950s, these practices continued secretly, making it a difficult history to prove. Today, there's one woman who's dedicated her life to finding this lost history of black identity. She's been called the slavery detective of the South.
All right.
Yeah.
And so the incomparable Dr. Antoinette Harrell and Mr. Arthur Walls. Welcome to Politics in Black.
Dr. Harrell, we see you. How are you today?
I am doing fine. What about you all?
Doing well. Now that you're here with us, doing even better. You know we always like having you here, so it's a pleasure to have you back. I'm not sure if we have Mr. Walls yet or not.
No, we do not have him as of yet.
Okay. Well, we'll start the
get
conversation because we have a lot to talk about. You are actually going to be providing testimony on Tuesday, the 29th, to the AB 3121 Task Force.
Mm-hmm.
I was ecstatic to see your name added to that agenda because I think your information and what you can share can help clear up a lot of the, I guess I'll call it confusion, that we're hearing from some task force members and from some folks that are kind of around the task force right now. And so one of the things I want to start with, Dr. Harrell, you came here previously, you talked to us about peonage, so I think we're familiar with what that is. You talked to us about incidents of peonage stretching well into the 1960s. But what we're hearing now, we're lineage reparations advocates, right? So we believe that reparations should be based on lineage or African-American families, those families that descended from persons enslaved. But some of the pushback that we're hearing is that how do you trace that, right? And we talked a little bit about it the first time you were here when I asked you about slavery being so long ago. But some of the pushback we get is that it is just so hard to trace our genealogy. But I also noticed that some of this pushback is coming from people who aren't genealogists. So I wanted to ask you that question. As a genealogist who has been in the field, you are doing the work on the ground. Can you talk to us about how difficult is it to trace our ancestry, even through, what we've been through?
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you all for having me as a guest on your show, on your program, should I say. Yes, there are some difficulties. There's some challenges when it comes down to researching our family history. And one of the things I shared with the reporter from the Los Angeles Times is there's money associated with finding or tracing your family history, especially for those that may have migrated out of those areas where their ancestors were. But of course, there's funding. There's money that's associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
So a person may not know just how difficult it could be until they start researching their family history, and then they're faced with those difficulties. And let me point out what those difficulties can mean. First of all, travel to that place, the copies, making copies of those documents, certifying those documents. What documents should we be looking at? How do we start? So that may be some of the challenges, and not to mention that in some cases, records may be missing. Records are stolen out of those courthouses. I know that to be a fact. That could propose a different challenge. And when you're researching your family history, if your family was enslaved, you're not only researching your family, much research those who enslaved your family.
Mm-hmm.
And so it runs into a difficult task,
Yeah.
a lengthy task.
Yeah. But
So
not an impossible task.
By all means, not an impossible task at all.
Mm-hmm.
At all. It's just a matter of, where do I start? How do I start? Who do I talk to? Where do I look?
Yeah.
That's the one thing that many of our ancestors did upon receiving their freedom, is to start to look for their families. 155 or something years later, I'm still researching my family history.
Mm-hmm.
I am still trying to gather the pieces of the puzzle that's missing for those that were sold on the auction blocks,
Okay.
those that was given to families as a present, what have you.
Yeah.
I am still searching for those family members,
Yep.
quote unquote. In 2022, I'm still searching.
Yes. Yes. No, thank you for that, because as I said, one of the things we're hearing is that, we should not look at lineage as a basis for reparations because we're unable to trace, back to our ancestry. And what I hear from you and see from the work that you're doing is that not only can we do it, I agree with you, we need funding, right? We need the state or the Fed to kick in some dollars to assist our community in making those efforts, but it's very possible if we have the funding and we have the commitment and the political will from our governing bodies, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I do want to point out that over the years, if I calculated the money that I have spent researching my family history, I know I'm probably up to about 10,000 in funding.
Wow.
Let me just say that.
Yeah.
We're traveling anywhere where my family have lived, enslaved.
Wow, our connection is a little bit challenging. Yeah, Dr. Harrell, you're going in and out just a little bit, but
we'll see if we can get that connection a little stronger here. But that's really where I wanted to start Friday, because what we have been hearing, and we heard it in February, is that how are we going to do this, right?
Right.
And it's coming from folks who don't do it for a living, but are assuming that it's so difficult to do or so impossible to do. And so I think when we have experts, like I believe in listening to the experts, right?
Well, the thing that she mentioned was the fact that it is the travel and the documents and getting the certifications.
Yeah.
And so one of my cousins and I, we actually went to North Carolina and we spent some time digging into the court records and pulling the books. And, the thing about the experience, at least that I can share with this audience, is that, it cost me a round trip plane ticket from here to go back to North Carolina. Thankfully, even though it was COVID, the people allowed us to extend our 30-minute appointment, because now, with COVID restrictions, you can't just have free access to these public records. You have to make appointments. But the other thing is that, like, there isn't like a dedicated staffer or person there who already understands the system, who's not going to have you like spending your, this is like OG library times. If you know what the Dewey Decimal System is, this is the extent of what those rooms are. They have book numbers. You got to figure out which book number you need to go to in order to find the one piece of information that you might be looking for. And so in that way, like, the system is not really set up to even have the genealogy work done. So in terms of moving the needle, I do think that when it comes to government and governance, there has to be an active requirement for such positions to be created, where there are on staff genealogists that are that, and it needs to be us. Yes, it needs to be on staff. I have to say, where I went, it was mostly us. But anyway, it has to be on staff genealogists. It also needs to be, when it comes to like different I guess organizations that have records, like the Mormon Church. You guys always hear, because we used to go down to Wilshire Boulevard. They have extensive records. They also have licensing fees that allow them to use other catalogs, I guess, that are owned by different people. Sometimes there are cataloged works that are private catalogs, families who maybe retained records, and so it's sitting in with somebody's family somewhere. It could be records kept in an attic. And so part of the financial part is also, okay, so let's say you get to a courthouse and you find a piece of information, and then that leads you to some family, let's say, that's still living in that part of the world. And so you go to engage that family's historian or the elders to that family. Well, now you got to spend what do you call it? Holiday Inn. You got to spend hotel fees now to extend your trip to be in some place, so that if these people allow you access to private records, that you're now able to spend that additional time. And so, I mean, we all know this is America. We don't have siestas. We don't have 4-week vacations. You're lucky if you get your little 2-week vacations. And so even in terms of the time, like, who uses their vacation time to do something like genealogical work? And so we have to be aware of that. And as we're going into this AB 3121 task force, I know without a doubt that is something very early on that we asked for. That is something very early on that we asked the state of California to actually put together some funding for genealogy work.
Oh, it absolutely has happened.
And so to Dr. Harrell's point, like, we advocated for that, and I think we have to spread that advocacy, because we could ask the state of California to ask all other 49 states, right, in order to do this. But I think it is going to have to come from within the states also, to rally and say, yes, as a nation, like, this is something we need to do. And this is something that I think is apolitical. It's it's not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. So let's bring Dr. Harrell back in.
Did we get a better connection now?
I'm hoping we have a better connection. Awesome.
All right. Now we got you, Dr. Harrell.
Whew. And so while you were reconnecting, I was just sharing that asking the California Task Force for resources in genealogy is something that had been done. But if you could continue where you were when you left off.
Yeah, I certainly would like to say that there are a lot of African Americans and the descendants of former enslaved ancestors that would like to research their family history. But of course, there's a price that's associated with that. And so I certainly would like to see that fundings be available through nonprofit organizations that would help those and assist those that would like to trace their family history but do not have the money. I mean, there's a membership for Ancestry, $24.99 a month. And so with this difficult time that we have with all the challenges that we have with economics right now, many people do not have that $24.99. But let me just be very clear here, very, very clear, as much as I possibly can. It was slavery that separated our families in the very first place.
Yes. Yes.
And so the first thing that we want to point out to repair those, if we can be repaired, is the one thing is to connect to who are we. It is a birthright to know who you are.
Amen. Preach.
And that birthright has been taken away from us as people with the horrible atrocities of slavery, should I say. And so therefore, there's no way that we can study reparations without considering the importance of genealogy, those who want to know, those that may want to take the DNA test to see if they're attesting to some of the people that may share the same surname as those that they're researching.
No, thank you for that, Dr. Harrell. And we're in absolute agreement. This is restoration of identity. And so I love how you put it as a birthright. It is our birthright to know who we are and where we came from. And I absolutely agree with you that there should be some government funding that assists us and facilitates our community in doing so as part of whatever reparations package that it comes down either in the state of California or federally. I wanted to ask you quickly on that point of the DNA part, right? Because I think you said something very important that I want to hone in on. You said usage of DNA when there's a similar surname, right? So really just making sure that we're either talking about a parent, grandparent, et cetera, in the same lineage. What we have been facing, in addition to that pushback on, how do we trace it, and it's impossible to trace lineage, is that there's been a misperception that what we're talking about is DNA. And that's not what you do. You're not defaulting to DNA. What you're doing is you're searching through records. You're going through birth, marriage, like you said, gifting records. You're looking into the slave owning families and their records. You're really doing this through record search, not DNA testing. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
Matter of fact, let me just say I do it through both.
Okay. Because I think there's been some idea or notion floated that what we're talking about is something that might come down to like a blood quantum sort of test, and that's absolutely
that
not.
was ridiculous when it was in the Constitution. So
absolutely.
Why would we go back to that?
And I just wanted to make it clear for folks who might not understand that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about lineage and then using the DNA to confirm lineage when we have like that thread that we can pull at, right?
Yes, using a DNA. Let me give an example of that. My great grandfather, Randall Harrell, had a brother named Thomas. And so I just met Thomas Harrell's descendants last year. But if it had not been for the DNA, I would not have ever been able to connect those dots. And that's why it's very important, because right now I am preparing to DNA test some of the families who was on the same plantation, just to see if there's any connection in our lineage there, especially since it was a small place, 23 people that was on the plantation. We want to know. Now, we heard many people say there's two different sets of Harrells, there's two different sets of Richardson. How do we know that until we DNA test? And that's the part of healing. That's the part of knowing. That's the part of wanting to know, who am I related to?
Yes.
And there's no way you can do that without the study of genealogy and yes, using some DNA to make those connections to those family members. Do I feel that we should be that we should encounter the burdens of providing or paying for those DNA testing ourselves? Absolutely not.
That's right.
Absolutely not. Because it was slavery that separated our families from the very beginning.
Yeah. No, I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And anyone that want to know, because you're going to have people who may not want to know. But for those that have the quest to want to know where they come from, they should not have to burden the financial responsibility of reconnecting to their family. of locating their family members.
Absolutely.
Agree,
Absolutely.
110%. We have to talk Mother May Lewis Walls Miller. We have to. You shared a little bit about her story the last time you were here. Since then, we know the film Alice has come out. Although the ending of Alice, it was kind of a general dedication. But I just want you to talk a little bit about her life and Arthur Walls. I'm hoping that maybe he'll still be able to make it within the last few minutes of the segment. But talk about their lives in the South. And I remember you sharing with me taking that family back to where they were and how emotional of an experience that was. And if you could talk about that.
Yes, thank you. I'll be happy to. I spent 10 years with that family, starting with May's father, sharing his experience as a slave in the 20th century, and listening to his children talk about what they had experienced, what they witnessed, what they went through. The movie itself, as they stated that it was based upon a true story. If it was based up on a true story, you have to go to what the source is.
That's right.
To really understand. There's no way that I can talk about Meg's story, Arthur's story, with laughter in it at all. Now, hear what I'm saying to you. What they went through was so, it cut you. It cut through May. It cut through Arthur, the pain and the suffering they had to go through. It cannot be told in a science fiction movie or a film, because what they went through, witnessing, first of all, first account, the beatings, the suffering, working from sun up to sundown, the rapes. There's no way that we can put that in the category of a science fiction movie, because it hurts so bad.
Yeah.
They experienced that. But for the producer of the movie not to consult with the family or myself, I found it to be the most disrespectful thing that one could ever do. So if you're going to say it's based up on the true story, talk to those that went through it.
Yes.
Talk to those that experienced the very things that you're talking about. Because you see, when I talk about May and her brothers and her father, it goes deep down inside. And the pain that they went through, and hearing them talk about what they had to go through, and taking them back to that location 50 years later. And I don't know why it is that most of the time when I'm taking families back, it's 50 years later. And they are reliving what happened to them.
Yes.
You see, it was no laughing matter. It was no funny matter of when May talked about being raped with her mother, lying on the floor, and both of them are being raped at the same time. When they talked about the days that they witnessed their father being beat with a trace chain, or the suffering they had to go through, all I can say is that if you really want the truth, you got to go to the source.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I agree with you. That's disrespectful. That's disrespectful not to talk to you, not to talk to the family, not to tell the story with the reverence and the respect that it deserves. And then Are any of the proceeds of the film coming to the family? Is there anything being done?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because when the family first heard about the film, they contacted me, and some of them was upset with me. And so one of the family members said, no, 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 no. I know that Dr. Harrell didn't have anything to do with this, because I would have went to that family. They was very broken that they did not come to them to talk with them. Mm-hmm. So when you use that tagline, inspired by a true story, the movie would have had a better, a much deeper ending if they would have talked to me.
Yeah.
Or the Wall family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in their case, there was never a legal conviction, if you will, of the people. I don't know what you call people who hold the people as into peonage. I don't know, was
evil.
Their term?
You call them evil?
But I mean, there was never any sort of conviction of the people who were holding May and her family. Is that correct?
Absolutely not. You're 100% correct about that. What the descendants of the Wall family said to me, that they should have talked to us. Mm-hmm. They should at least had enough respect to come to us and talk to us. You see, Hollywood itself would tell the story from their angle.
Yep.
But let's talk about the true story. I have been told many a times in the past that what I have uncovered is too dark. What do you mean too dark?
But you know, the old people used to not talk. My great-grandmother and my Uncle John, they both died over 100. They were centurions, right? I think I arranged our first family reunion, and this was 20 years ago at this point, when they both were alive. And when we went down, and this is the first time anyone on my line or my Uncle John's line heard them talking about like their childhood. And it was astonishing to us that what they talked about was not highly informational. It was about soda pop. It was about some game they used to play as kids. Like even though that was the most they opened up, they did not open up about their lives. And I think, old people who experienced this, like, they shut it down.
But I think what Dr. Harrell is saying is that the criminals, the people who committed the crimes, are saying that this history is too dark. So it's literally a criminal telling you, don't talk about my crime because it's so bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we are confronted with critical race theories, it's like saying, look, we know this happened, but we don't want our children to have to bear that burden of hearing this.
Yeah.
And so we have to send a very powerful message to Hollywood. Like, we won't go to the box office. You won't get.
That's what I said.
There's no way. There's no way that you can take and make this and write these stories based upon what you want it to look like.
I agree.
You see, because there's no way that May or Arthur or their siblings should not be speaking every week on what they went through, on those atrocities. Hearing it from me as a researcher is one thing, but to get it from the people who actually lived through it, who went through it, that's the first source.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. We have to hear it from those that went through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Harrell, you are so powerful when you speak. So, but you got me thinking about so many different things. So first of all, I want to call the name Keke Palmer because she's the executive producer of this movie. So, and she's us. So, this is something that's even harder to, swallow coming from us. But also understanding that this is not new. Like, they are taking our history, they are whitewashing it. Like you said, they're washing the crime out of it. And so we are really being re-enslaved over and over again, right? They from the shores of West Africa to this land, we were enslaved, and now the legacy of what we went through is being taken away from us. So we're being stripped again and again and
we
again.
saw this with Emmett Till's Families
Absolutely.
Foundation.
It's the same story. The Emmett Till story is the same story as the Wall story, as countless other stories. And so I agree with you. We need to stop support. I didn't pay any money to go see this movie because I saw your critique of it, and I understood that you know this family. And so I didn't want to put any money into the pockets of people that weren't talking to you and weren't talking to this family. But we need to be focused on that as a community and knowing that our stories are ours. We own those. And anyone that wants to tell our story had to come through us. We have to be in that room. We have to be the ones telling them, no, you're not going to make this a sci-fi movie. This is going to be a horror flick. Right. And white people are the boogeyman and the monsters. And that's just what it is. That's what happened. So we're going to tell it the way that it actually happened. So I appreciate you doing this work on the ground and being in these places and bringing and uplifting these families, because what you're doing it's God's work. I got no other words for it. It's God's work.
Yeah.
Yes, and I want to say to you, when I heard Kiki Palmer on the talk, I had myself a cup of peppermint tea and I had to go to sleep because I had to take a nap, because it's like, look, I've been researching as long as this young lady have been in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. And there is no laughing matter about those that was held in slavery. And I hope that Kiki Palmer understand that, first of all, it's no laughing matter. We can't tell this in a joking way. This is as sacred as the Jews said the Holocaust is to them.
Yes.
Hear what I'm saying? Show some respect to those that have suffered, died, and the research. Do not use my name or my research in a movie that you cannot come to the source from which it come from.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, Dr. Harrell.
And I need the community to stand with me, stand behind me, to send a powerful message that we can no longer tolerate the whitewashing of what our ancestors have been through and still going through for those that are still living today.
That's right. Let's talk about that, Dr. Harrell, the ancestors and what they went through and what we're still going through, what the descendants are going through and those who are still living today, right? Because you're going to be talking to the AB 3121 task force next week. And the discussion point that everybody is focused on is this topic of lineage versus race as the basis for reparations. And so your work, you are tracing family lines, you are going back and you are using lineage as your tool to be able to unravel and untangle some of all of this atrocity that was done to us. And what we are hearing is that the opponents to lineage are saying that you're not a specific people, right? The people of the Black American lineage
a more specific people
are
in
not
this
specific.
country,
We didn't go through anything that's unique to us. We should all just reduce it down to blackness being an encounter with the police, right? And so I want to get your take on that.
Cab.
Or can't catch a cab, exactly. I want to get your take on that, given the work that you do on the issue of lineage versus race or all Black people.
As I stated before, it is my birthright. They have taken away my birthright. Knowing who I am. And all that I have researched, experienced in my own family, I dare not sit here and say that whatever they feel, whatever they say, It goes back to every man, woman, boy, child, girl have a right to know who they are as an individual. And when you take that away, you have taken away the core existence of that human being to know who their mother, who their father is. So despite if they sit at the table and have these round table discussions of what should it look like, what it should look like is this is very important to look at the study of family history. Let me give you an example. I was reading a slave narrative, and the slave narrative from Texas said that this young man who sold off a plantation and returned years later, he said that his mother, well, his wife, was grooming his hair, and she saw this scar in his head. And the scar, his wife asked him, what is this scar? How did you get this? He said, my mother accidentally hit me in the head with some type of iron object. She passed out because she knew that was her son. So her husband was her son and her husband.
Yeah.
Now, when I thought about that, I to the asylums or to the grave. That's how deep it cut.
Yeah.
So regardless to what the opposition say, we have to stand on the fact that is the number one healing is to repair, to study, and to know your family history.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the most important.
Amen. Amen.
Let's not get it confused.
Amen. And, Dr. Harrell, I want to see you sitting at the center of that effort. Part of what we advocate for is the reestablishment of the Freedmen's Bureau in not only California, but also federally. And I believe that this is something when we talk about funding for genealogical research, when we talk about creating, genealogists and making sure that we are putting resources behind this effort. I would love to see you at center of that, given your decades of experience doing this, because there are lots of people out there that are talking who haven't done what you've done. They haven't walked into these rooms. They haven't sat with these families. A lot of them, I don't think, ever been to the South. So I would love to see you as a director of genealogy for a federal Freedmen's Bureau, where you are allocating funding and resources throughout this nation.
Especially in the South.
Especially focusing on the South first, right? To make sure that our people can start reconnecting these broken ties. Because I agree with you, it is our birthright. That's what was stolen from us. And it is highly disrespectful for people to take that and then equate it to someone who just got here, 30 or 40 years ago and get stopped by the police and make our experience the same as that person. So I love you, Dr. Harrell. That's what I want to say. I love you, and I want to see you continuing in this work and helping you in any way that we can. You just let us know how.
Yeah, and I want to give, I know you posted this on Twitter, on social media, and I retweeted it. But even with Arthur Walls not being here, what you tweeted was that Arthur Walls was held in slavery to 1963. His story was told on Vice, and please donate to Arthur. And so his Cash App is the $, Mr. ADWALLS.
Can we throw that in the chat, moderators?
Yes.
Can we throw Arthur Walls' Cash App in the chat?
It's $, Mr. ADWALLS. And I believe you can follow him at Arthur Walls. And the spelling of Arthur is AUTHUR. WALLS. I just want to, I would imagine coming onto a show like this, and even though he's our elder and he's sharing with family, I would imagine that still just, having to go back into time and space is an emotional thing for him. And so even without his presence, I want to recognize him and his experience.
Yes.
And like Chad said, we are so grateful. I mean, you send chills, when you talk to us about this, because it really is that important. When it gets to the storytelling, I straight out asked the task force to build the studio like a Paramount Studios that is for, the descendant populations. They can come in to actually just bring their production crew, and they get free reign, of time to make films and stories the way that we want and need them to be made. I think it's important to rebuild ourselves, from yesterday all the way up to today, and filling in the gaps if we need to with that DNA science and research. But the birthright is this powerful birthright. Mm-hmm. It's a birthright to know who you are. And I have found the more I do this work, the less I accept from people.
Ain't that the truth?
That's what I have found. And so thank you so much, Dr. Harrell. Do you have any closing words? You want to tell the people where to find you on social media?
Yes, they can go to my website at www.peonagedetective.com. I just want to say to people that it is very important that you study your own family history. And I do know there's an expense that's with that. And I do believe that it should be part of the study for reparations, is to make those fundings available for those that have the quest and want to know their family history. And certainly I want to say that it should be considered, and highly considered, is to make fundings available.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
For those that want to know.
Absolutely. And Dr. Harrell, on that note, we need to make an introduction of you to Dr. Shirley Weber, the Secretary of State of California. In conversations with her, she wants to lend her office's resources to this effort. She said to us, in so many words that, Secretary of State's office, our records, our resources are available. We want to make sure that they're being put towards helping reclaim our birthright. So I want to make that introduction. I think that's someone that, two powerful women connecting on this subject. I think that you guys could do incredible work here. And on Tuesday, I am so looking forward to hearing your statement to the task force, because again, there seems to be a very real confusion that's being floated about who we are and what was taken from us, and that we are a unique group, a unique people that deserves not only recognition, but reparations.
And I want to thank both of you for supporting this work, supporting this cause. And thank you for allowing me to utilize your platform as a way to get the message to the general population. And the ancestors will not allow us to stop.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
They will not allow us to stop.
That's right.
They are rising in power.
Yes,
if anyone really understand that.
Yes, they are.
They are rising in power. I just want to say before closing, it is the past that shapes the future, and the future that shapes and the present that shapes the future. We must always honor those that came before us, because if it wasn't for them, there would be no us.
That's right. That's right.
We must not take for granted not one moment of their suffering for us to be able to do what we are doing today. And we must always exert all of our resources to study the past, because the past helps us to understand where we are today and where we are going.
That's right, Dr. Harrell. Thank you so much again for coming back again, speaking to us. Again, I'm going to be hanging on every word that you say next Tuesday at the AB 3121 Task Force meeting. I think that you can hopefully set some people straight. So thank you
I
so
look
much.
forward to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a
Thanks,
great rest of
Dr.
your Sunday.
Harrell.
Thank you for having me as a guest.
And for those that want to follow her at Africa Harrell, Harrell on Twitter, that's where you can find her. And she tweets about some powerful things. And
Always
as you
powerful.
see, she
Always
is not
powerful.
scared to let you know how she
If
feels.
You need to follow Dr. Harrell. If you're not following her, you need to change that right now. Jasmine, Dr. Harrell, get those people on your timeline, because what they're giving us is on the ground. You know, Dr. Harrell is down there in the rural South, and she is tracing records that a lot of people that talk about genealogy and how hard it is to do are not willing to do. So I listen to the people, and we should all listen to people that are putting in the work, that aren't scared to walk through the rural South and get the work done. Right? Don't let people that
have never done
that
it,
aren't wearing out
never
the
tried
boot
it.
leather. Yeah, if you're not wearing out the shoe leather doing the work, be quiet.
All right, so we're going to take a breath. That was heavy, actually. We're going to take a breath, and we are going to get into some of these AB 3121 final calls to action.
That's right. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, hit the Cash App, Venmo, $ NAASDLA. We'll be right back. Or are we going to stay here? We gonna stay? Oh, no, we gonna.
Ooh, I just needed a breath, y'all. I'm sorry.
So if you were to bring the black share of wealth at least to the black share of the population, it would require an additional at least $10 trillion.
Welcome back, fam. We are in our last little leg here, and for the last 10 minutes, we're going to talk about what's happening on Tuesday, March 29th at the AB 3121 Task Force hearing. As we've been alluding to throughout the show, this is a big hearing that's coming up where the task force is going to finally vote on the issue of lineage versus race when determining reparations, or the basis for reparations. And this is a vote, that has been delayed a couple of times, but we're going to get it on Tuesday, and we want to make sure the family understands what's happening, and also that you understand what you can do between now and Tuesday to make sure your voice is being heard no matter where you are. And understand, no matter where you are. This is not just for California residents. This is for anybody that is a black person who descends from chattel slavery in this country. And you see the importance of what's happening here in California and the implications of that vote on Tuesday.
Yes, because there are national implications. We can't sidestep that. We are keenly aware that what happens here in California is ultimately going to affect the federal case for reparations. We have the national organization in the presidential priorities published in August of last year, something called Bill 1865, which is a descendant perspective on what a federal commission on reparations should look like. It does actually include a Department of Genealogists. Yep. So we are sincere in saying this. This isn't some presentation. This isn't just about, well, let's get some NGOs and, some C3s together to do this work. We really want to center a Freedmen's Bureau for the descendant community. We really want to make sure that the birthright of knowing who you are happens through genealogy work. And we are really serious about that. And so now's the time. If you have questions, if you're in the chat, I have the chat up. If anybody has any questions right now.
We're going to run through the calls to action.
Yeah,
right?
About these calls to action. Just start posting them and we'll address them as we go through. So We have our first clip with our call to action. That is the call to action on State Senator Bradford. Bradford, he voted no. I'm not really sure what his thought process was after 9 hearings.
Yeah. Well, he voted yes to delay. He voted yes
well,
to
yes,
delay.
correction.
Yeah, yes
he
to
wrote
delay.
it yes to delay, which was a no to right now.
Yeah.
And so call to action, call him. We did some outreach in his community to actually have his constituents say that they were for race-based legislation.
Over 100 signatures from Stephen Bradford's voters.
We talked to everybody, not just black folks. We talked to his constituents. And so now's the time to call him this Monday to really let him know. Monday and Tuesday, because I think hearings are Wednesday. Yeah.
Call him today. Leave a voicemail. He should come into work on Monday with a full voicemail and a full email box. So make sure we're reaching out to Senator Bradford. We also want to reach out to Assembly Member Reggie Jones Sawyer, who also voted to delay. And so we want to make sure that he's hearing from us. And we also want to reach out to Governor Newsom, who selected
the bulk of these members.
The bulk of the members
that voted yes.
That voted to delay the vote on lineage as the basis for reparations.
And I just want to say something about Assembly Member Jones Sawyer. We have got to stop with these politicians that want to be careerists on the backs of our struggle, on the backs of our not having. And Reggie Jones Sawyer, God bless him, but I believe he has a district where only about 19, maybe 20% of his constituents are black voters.
Yep.
And even though that might be a challenge for him in terms of advocacy, lineage-based reparations, he should be able to articulate to his constituents that are not black or that are not descendants from the laws of U.S. chattel slavery and California's recapture slave laws. He should be able to communicate to his constituents in a way where he still can be reelected. It can't be one single issue. This is a single issue. You're telling me that your governance is so lacking that should you bring up one issue, that's enough to take you totally out? Yep. That is not our responsibility. That is your responsibility to communicate and say why you support. Not tell us, no, I'm not going to support this for you, even though I come from the Jim Crow South, even though this is what my grandparents endured, because I believe in some sort of global Africa or universal blackness. It's not the same.
Yep.
And the state is actually missing the opportunity to actually have a discussion on what private partnership would look like, because racism today does not happen by state sanction. It happens by individuals who make racist decisions. And so if you can't legislate racism out of a human being, you've got to incentivize corporate America in order for them to do the right thing. And I have not heard that once come out of the AB 3121 task force. They have missed the opportunity about what a private government partnership would look like in this space in order to really further lineage-based repair with maybe universal policies that might move the society in the direction that we want. Because of racism, but you can't take it based on our struggle and deny us our reparations claim because you're not strong enough to articulate those things. So
I think you nailed it, Friday. I'm looking forward to Tuesday. This is going to be monumental, and I think we're going to show up in droves. In fact, I know the family's going to show up in droves. Before we get out of here, though, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the opposition and what we saw come out of the opposition earlier this week, I believe on Friday. So for folks who are unaware, the National African American Reparations Commission issued a letter on the 25th, and this is their response to the lineage reparations push. And so what we are saying is that it should be traced through lineage. That should be the basis for reparations. And in this response, there are several false assumptions that are made just off the bat, right? Just the whole first page is false assumptions. But I did want to call out a part that stood out to me, because they are saying that their pushback or their opposition to lineage reparations is founded in two basic principles. And the first principle is that lineage cannot be directly proved. So I think anybody who's been watching the show and listened to Dr. Harrell, she debunked that pretty passionately and pretty succinctly. So point number 2 is false. So let's just make sure that we understand our lineage can be proved. Okay, don't let anybody tell you that it's impossible.
If the indigenous could do it, we could do it.
Correct. And the second, what they're saying is the second false assumption is that reparations are only due for the period of enslavement in U.S. history. And so as you heard Dr. Harrell also say, we're not just talking about enslavement, we're talking about post-enslavement oppression and dispossession and divestment that was inflicted upon our communities, right? So we're not just talking about slavery, we're talking about Jim Crow, we're talking about black codes, we're talking about lynching, redlining, gentrification, mass incarceration, police brutality, red summer. It goes on and on and on. But understand that was inflicted upon the same lineage. So do not allow these folks to make these fallacious arguments to you when we know they're not true. When I need the family to really understand this and dig your heels in on these points. We know who we are. We can trace who we are, and we understand what was done to us and what was owed. So just directly, Mr. Daniels, your letter is trash. It's trash, okay? And understand that that's not going to work here.
It's not.
It's not going to work here. We understand who we are. We understand what we're fighting for. And as you heard Dr. Harrell say, the ancestors are not going to allow us to rest. We're going to keep on fighting, and we're going to keep on fighting on this lineage note. So if you want to have a serious conversation about how we get to reparations, an honest conversation, stop playing games.
All right. And on that note, it's been another episode of Politics in Black. Look out for those hearings. We will be there in force. Show up and show out. Until next time, peace and reparations, y'all.
Peace, fam.
Our issues, our voices, our views. This is Politics